There was a time when every family seemed to have a grandma who knew exactly how to make every visit feel special. No matter when you showed up, there was always something waiting for you to eat. The little things she did were simply a way of life, but many of those traditions have quietly disappeared. Today we're looking back at the things grandmas used to do that today's generation may never experience. Tell us in the comments which ones your grandma did, and whether you still do any of them today. She saved bacon grease in a coffee can beside the stove.
Slowly remembering stuff my grandma used to do.
There was almost always a can sitting right next to the stove, usually an old Folgers or Maxwell House coffee can, sometimes with the labels still half peeled off. Every time bacon or sausage got cooked, the leftover grease didn't go down the drain. It went straight into that can. Nothing about that felt strange at the time. It was just where the grease went. That can got used for weeks, sometimes months, and whenever a recipe called for a little extra fat, Grandma reached for that can without a second thought. It wasn't about being frugal for its own sake. It was just how kitchens worked back then. Nothing got wasted if it still had a use. She always had something ready to eat when you visited. No matter what time you showed up, there was always something waiting. It could be Jell-O mold, maybe lime with crushed pineapple, chilled and ready in those little individual cups. You'd walk in, and before anyone even said hello properly, you were already being handed one, sometimes with a cookie to go with it. Nobody waited for it to be perfectly unmolded either. Most kids just ate it straight out of the little cup with a spoon. Even if you insisted you weren't hungry, she'd usually tell you to have a little something anyway. It wasn't really about the food itself. It was her way of saying, "You're welcome here," without ever having to say the words. She made quilts from fabric scraps. Nothing ever really got thrown away if it could still be used for something, and old clothes were no exception. Worn-out shirts, outgrown dresses, even flour sack material, all of it got cut down into small pieces and set aside for the next quilt. Piecing it together could take weeks, sometimes months, done a little at a time in the evenings or whenever there was a spare hour. And it wasn't just about staying warm. Years later, someone could point to a single square and say, "That was your grandpa's work shirt." Or, "That came from the dress your mom wore as a little girl." Every quilt kept memories alive long after the clothes themselves were gone. She snapped beans or shelled peas on the front porch. Some of the calmest moments of the day happened right there on the porch, usually in the late afternoon, with a big bowl in her lap and a smaller empty bowl beside it. Green beans got snapped, peas got shelled, and it wasn't rushed. It was almost meditative, done while catching up on the day or just sitting quietly enjoying the weather. Every now and then, you'd hear another handful of beans drop into the bowl, the kind of ordinary sound that somehow became part of summer itself. Kids usually got pulled into it too, handed a handful of beans and told to snap the ends off, whether they wanted to help or not. It was one of those chores that didn't feel like work, more like an excuse to sit outside, listen, and talk for a while before dinner. She saved you from switchings from your parents. No matter what kind of trouble you got into, there was a good chance Grandma stepped in before things got too serious. She had a way of talking your parents down or distracting them just long enough for the moment to pass, or sometimes quietly pulling you aside into the kitchen to have a few words with you herself. It wasn't that she didn't believe in discipline, she just had her own version of it. Somehow, Grandma's house always felt like a safe place, where even after you did something you weren't supposed to, you knew someone was still on your side. She made jams and jellies at home. Come late summer, the kitchen usually smelled like boiling fruit and sugar for days at a time. Strawberries, peaches, whatever was ripe and plentiful that season, all of it got cooked down, poured into jars, usually ball or mason jars, and sealed while still hot. There was always a little left in the pot, too, and if you were lucky, you got to scrape the last bit onto a piece of bread or taste it straight from the spoon while it was still warm. Once cooled, those jars lined up in rows in the pantry, enough to last the whole family well into winter. And there was always a little pride in it too, because every jar on that shelf meant the family would have something homemade to enjoy long after the growing season was over.
Last year I canned 443 jars of food, and I'm hoping to do more this year.
She kept a coin purse with exact change for the milkman. Back when milk still got delivered right to the doorstep, the day often began with the soft clink of glass bottles on the porch before anyone else was up. By the time the milkman made his rounds, a small coin purse with the exact change was already waiting, usually on a windowsill or tucked just inside the screen door. There was no chasing him down and no fumbling for coins. It had all been taken care of the night before. You rarely even saw the milkman, but somehow you knew he had seen that little coin purse waiting. It was a simple routine built on trust, repeated the same way week after week, and one more reminder of a time when even the smallest everyday habits had their own quiet rhythm. She crocheted Afghans for family members.
I have just completed joining all 93 pieces of this beautiful Afghan. I want to tell you, it took a little bit of time to put this all together, but I really enjoyed the process.
There was almost always a hook and a growing pile of yarn sitting somewhere nearby, usually next to her favorite chair. Afghans got made for practically everyone. A new baby, a grandchild heading off to college, a couple just getting married. Each one took weeks to finish, one row at a time, usually while watching television in the evening or just sitting and talking. There was usually one draped over the back of the couch, too, ready to pull over your legs on a cool evening without even thinking about it. And once it was done, it wasn't just a blanket. It became something you kept for decades, pulled out every winter, a little more worn and a little more loved every year. Saved green stamps for rewards. Every time you shopped at certain stores, you walked out with a little booklet of stamps, S&H green stamps, based on how much you spent. Those stamps got licked and stuck into collector books, page after page, until there were enough saved up actually to redeem for something. Toasters, dishes, sometimes even furniture. It all came from a catalog, and the whole family usually had an opinion about what to save up for next. Filling those books took patience, sometimes months, but finally redeeming them always felt like a little family victory, because every stamp had been saved one shopping trip at a time. She ironed handkerchiefs and pillowcases. The hiss of a hot iron and the smell of freshly pressed cotton were just part of an ordinary afternoon. The iron came out for more than just clothes going out the door. Handkerchiefs, small and easy to overlook, still got pressed flat and neatly folded before going back in a drawer. Pillowcases got the same treatment too, smoothed out and crisp, even though nobody but family would ever see them. It wasn't about showing off for company. It was simply a matter of taking pride in doing things properly, even when no one else would ever notice. Sent handwritten birthday and Christmas cards. Every birthday, every Christmas, a card arrived in the mailbox, and it wasn't picked at random off a shelf either. You could usually recognize her handwriting on the envelope before you even opened it. She usually took real time picking one out, often a Hallmark card with just the right message, then added her own handwritten note inside, sometimes just a line or two, sometimes a whole page. Getting that card in the mail felt different than anything digital ever could, because you knew she'd actually sat down, thought of you specifically, and taken the time to write it herself. She made homemade remedies for colds and coughs. The smell of Vicks Vapo Rub or a pot of chicken soup on the stove usually meant someone in the house was under the weather. Before anyone thought to call a doctor over a common cold, there was usually a home remedy tried first. A spoonful of honey and lemon, a hot bowl of chicken soup, maybe a chest rub like Vicks Vapo Rub if congestion got bad enough. And if the problem was a scraped knee instead of a cough, there was usually a little bottle of bright red mercurochrome somewhere in the medicine cabinet, ready to leave its mark. None of it was fancy, but it was part of being taken care of. You'd get tucked into bed with a warm cup of something, a hand checking your forehead every so often, and the feeling that Grandma always had something nearby to make things better. Patient, resourceful, and always ready for whoever walked through the door. The little things she did were simply a way of life, but many of those traditions have quietly disappeared. None of it was written down in any manual. It was just life, passed along through habit and love, one generation quietly teaching the next without ever making a big deal out of it. So tell us, which one of these did your own grandma do? Or maybe, which ones have you kept alive yourself without even realizing where they came from? And if this one brought back a memory or two, you'll probably want to watch our video on the things housewives used to do in the 50s and 60s that quietly disappeared as well.